Hello, my name is Faina, and I have dedicated the last 7 years to honing my craft and fine tuning my strategy.
Welcome to Trading in the Zen, where we help traders find their groove. I'm your co-host, Louise Nonwheeler, a trading psychologist and multi-award-winning clinical hypnotherapist. Join us weekly as we delve into the trading world, exploring psychology, well-being, health, and mindset. Through expert insight, interviews, and actionable strategies, we help you as traders unlock the mindset needed to navigate markets with confidence and achieve peak performance.
At Trading in the Zen, we believe that there's much more to trading than numbers and probabilities. Like an athlete, a trader should operate in their peak state. Each week, you will have mind-blowing interviews as well as actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become a better trader. Thanks for spending time with us today. Now, let's dive right in. In this episode, we interview Rich Ingram. Rich is a keynote speaker and an endurance athlete. Despite losing his arm in combat, he continues to embrace life's challenges and thrives in adversity. Welcome to Trading in the Zen. Today we have someone really, really special. His name is Rich Ingram. Welcome to the show, Rich.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show, Rich.
We know that you are a veteran, and we know that you're a motivational speaker. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're coming from and how you ended up from, being in the Army? I believe it's the Army, correct? From being in the Army to becoming a motivational speaker, because it's quite a leap.
That's right. It is. So I lost my arm in my first deployment in 2005 in Iraq. So I was handed a check and got a salute, said thank you for your service, and I was retired. And had a lot of experiences there, but I had a mindset shift during that period of time, and I started racing in triathlon as an amputee, and I started competing against these folks with all of their appendages. I was like, man, if I could do this, why can't I go back in the military? Because my dream was always to be an officer, and no one had ever done that before. And so a lot of things happened, but we were able to change policy, and I became the first amputee to commission as an officer because I was enlisted before. So I served 3 more combat tours as an amputee between Iraq and Afghanistan, and then I was 30 years old and had a leg injury. And I was like, man, all right, I got a leg, I got an arm, I'm done. I'm 30, moving on. And so I entered the civilian world. And I had a lot of great experiences. I was a leader in a Fortune 500 company, started and sold my own small business, profitable small business. And between those two things, I figured out what I didn't want to do, and where my heart really was in motivating other people and helping other people realize that our pains and gains are all part of the process, and this is just a journey that we're all on. And that's how folks started asking me to speak, and so that's what I do now. That's my journey.
So when you lost your arm, how did you not wallow in self-pity and because it's such a traumatic experience, I imagine. How did you process that, and how did you say, well, this is the beginning of a new reality, as opposed to being stuck in that? I'm sure it's very easy to feel so out of place, and it's a whole new reality, right? You have to relearn a lot of skills. And how do you persevere in something like that, and how do you not? What do you say? What did you say to yourself?
So, when you have traumatic experiences like that, you have defining moments, right? And so from those defining moments, I was able to learn. So hopefully other people don't have to go to the extent of losing an arm to figure out these tools. I'm going to give them to you. But one of the defining moments for me was when I arrived at the hospital 2 days after I lost my arm, the hospital in the United States. My mom had my fly fishing rod, of all things, and of course, I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this thing? Because when I woke up from surgery and realized I was missing an arm, it was exactly what you said. It was, what am I mean, I just tried not to cry when I saw it, right? Like, what am I going to do now? I'm going to be another homeless veteran on the street corner asking for your money. But that throb was my mom's way of saying life doesn't have to change for you. And so a couple of days later, my cousin took me out to the front lawn of the hospital. He's like, we're going to do this. We're going to figure this out. And so I tried it, and it wasn't long before I broke down crying, because another thing that I identified with had been taken away. And my cousin, knowing who I am, said, we're gonna keep at it. We're gonna keep going. And so I channeled all that frustration, and I figured out how to use my teeth to strip the line, and my fingers to. And so it wasn't how anyone would really think you'd do that, but my mindset changed from what am I going to do now to whatever it takes, I will keep moving forward. And so from there, that's when I started getting back, because I was always a runner. And I started volunteering, or these nonprofits were set up to where they give you race bibs and all this stuff. And I signed up for this race, and a guy came up a couple of days later and was like, dude, you didn't do too poorly. Do you want to be on my triathlon team? And I kind of chuckled at him, because I thought I'd swim in circles or, sink. But I agreed to it. And that decision put me on a completely different trajectory in my rehabilitative journey. And that is what solidified my mindset, because I was horrible in the pool. I mean, I could not even get to when I first jumped in, I couldn't even get to the end of the pool without busting out in like a dog paddle breaststroke. When I cycled, all the guys that I cycled with, and ladies, were waiting on me at the stop sign for me to catch up to them. Had I two arms when I was asked to be on a triathlon team, I probably would have said no, because I was in a fixed mindset. I knew what I was good at and what I was talented at, and I didn't want anyone to see me fail at anything. I wanted to stay on my perch, so I thought. And so in training these triathlons, I mean, I failed repetitively. Every time I showed up, I set a goal, and it's like I wasn't getting to it, and it was just draining. But it was a new me, right? So it was a little bit easier for me to accept that growth mindset, because I was in a vulnerable period of figuring out who I was. But what I learned is true transformation only occurs through discomfort. And all of these pains that I'm going through they're relative to the process and a part of that journey. So that's kind of how my mindset shifted into, man, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. So
yeah. You're a real inspiration, Rich. And it sounded like, you had so much support, from the moment you were in hospital. And I guess that really helped, to know that there were people there to support you and kind of show you, or help to show you a different way as well. But just, such resilience. And I guess, would you say that the triathlons gave you almost a sense of purpose as well?
What 100%, 100%. So, what I learned over the years, though, is that when we talk about purpose, because so I created this framework, and this is one of the things that my talks are on. It's called Raw Resilience. This is the name of my company, but it's purpose, mindset, and process. And you have to start with purpose. And what I mean by that is, before I lost my arm, my purpose was soldiering. Now, not that it's a problem, but where you're going to run into issues is that when that's taken away from you, you also lose your identity. And so purpose and identity are intertwined. So, the first step is, why are you put on this earth? And also, who do you want to be? Right? You can redefine who you are and what your purpose is. But willpower, when you're facing all of those rejections at work, if you're in sales or in trading, you're just taking these losses, or missing your checks. Like, what you have to realize is that willpower is part of your prefrontal cortex, right? It's one of our executive functions, and it's like a gas tank. Every time you hit the gas pedal, it gets depleted, right? And it's responsible for judgment, decision making. And so all of the planning. So all of these things, as you're hitting that gas pedal, it's making it more difficult for you to do your job. So what is the true motivator to keep you going? Purpose. And I'm not talking about some surface purpose. So for me, I'm an ultra marathon runner, but that's not my purpose because I'm one jacked up knee away from not being a runner, right? So I have to dig deep and peel the onion back. What at my core is my purpose? Because when you figure that out, that's what's going to help you go. And, I'll tell you, I was running this 50 miler and my IT band it's just a brutal injury. So annoying. Went out at mile 8 of this 50 miler. Now, this was at 10,000 feet of elevation. I'm in New Orleans where we have negative 15 feet of it. So it was already a tough race in the mountains of Colorado. And my knee blew up at 8 miles. I had to hop for 40 miles. And my wife met me at the midpoint 8. She was like, "Are you going to be able to finish this?" It never occurred to me that was an option, because the reason why I run and I'm in physical activities is because that is what maintains my emotional stability. And that is how I continue to lead. That is how I continue to motivate. And so really what my purpose is, I'm put here to lead. I'm put here to motivate other people. And so if my knee is taken away from me, I will continue to do those things and I will figure out other ways to do that. So if I lose my voice speaking, I will figure out other ways to continue motivating other people. So my purpose isn't to be a speaker. And so that's how we have to realize how we perceive what our purpose is. And you've got to dig deep and figure out what that is, because that is going to motivate you to continue and get to the finish line.
Absolutely. Beautifully articulated, by the way. So, and I think that's really important. I think it's, everybody should try and source their purpose, because it's a driver. It's a natural driver that will just, no matter how tall that mountain is, you're going to find a way. And I do understand, and I do relate to that. And so the question is, when with your motivational speaking, you mentioned the framework, but is that what you really kind of focus on with kind of your audience to help them find their purpose?
It is. So, my talks are keynote speeches. So they're not workshops, so to speak. So I don't delve too far into step 1 is this, step 2 is this. But, when I talk about it, I intertwine my story into it. And so for me, I had I won't say a rough childhood. I was raised in an affluent family, but my father was an outlier. He was gone when I woke up, gone when I went to bed, and he didn't take me fishing or hunting, all these other things I saw my friends doing. But I was like a supernova with all this energy, but no direction, just going everywhere. So when I joined the military, I found purpose in that, and I was able to channel all that energy. And through that process, though, I'll say this: one thing that I found was that my dad was an outlier, and I know that, but he was successful. And to be not just successful, but to be at the top tier, that top 1%, you have to be an outlier, and you have to be willing to give up and sacrifice things and go through the pains that are on the journey to get there. So I hope that answers the question a little bit. I don't, when I talk about purpose, I intertwine it into that soldiering story, because I lost everything. Everything was taken away from me when I rolled over and saw my limb. I mean, I lost my identity. And so it took a while for me to regain that, but to figure out that, okay, now I'm running, now I'm a triathlete, but that's not who I am. Right. And so that's the journey.
Yeah. Thank you, Rich.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So how do you deal with negative self-talk? And sometimes, like, as traders, or frequently, you have a string of losses, and you start your confidence starts to get compromised, and then you start to do like this negative self-talk loop, and then sure enough, you create exactly what you don't want, because there's I think you put as much energy into what you don't want as what you do want, sometimes even more. And so it's sort of the universal law, cannot decide on which way you want to go. So it just gives you where the most energy goes. So what do you do when you get into that loop of like, maybe I can't, maybe this is not for me, maybe I don't want to do any of this anymore. I don't want to get up. Do you have those days? And if you do, is there anything that makes you get up and go anyway?
100%. So, I think, like you said, everybody has that. There's not one person. Tony Robbins is going to go through those moments, right? And so, what works for me, and I consider that to be anxiety, right? Because you're worried about something that maybe is not really reality. So, anyways, the first thing that I do, I try and meditate. Now, granted, trading, it seems to be kind of a quick process. At least do some breathing exercises. Let's get calm. And the next thing I do is I journal. I have this composition notebook that I take everywhere, old school. And so the first thing that I do is I write down, this is exactly how I'm feeling. This is what's going through my head right now. And then the second thing is, okay, why am I feeling like that? So in trading, because I'm taking X amount of losses, I've made this amount of trades, I'm in the red this much, whatever the answer may be. Well, then the next thing is, okay, am I following the plan that I had? Am I following? Because we all have a strategy in how we're performing our work. Yes, I'm following the plan ahead. Or you're identifying something that, okay, well, maybe I could add this or that, whatever it is, and then I go through some affirmations. I am a successful trader. I am, resilient. I know that these feelings are just part of the journey, and I will they're just undulating, and I will come out of them. And so what you've then done by doing by writing down those 4 things in that third process, we've now identified either okay, we are on track. Let's stay the course. We were in a normal state of emotion when we made this strategy, we made this plan. Let's stay the course. Or, hey, something in our environment maybe has changed and I need to change my plan. Okay, let's stay the course right now. When things calm down, I'll create another plan. But we've either identified that we need to add some things, or 2, stay the course. This is these things that I'm feeling are just part of the process. Works 100% of the time. And I get turned back around. I'm like, boom, I'm back on track.
Yeah. And it sounds like this shift can be quite quick. You've got a process that
quick.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Yeah, I mean, all of the things that you do, like meditation, affirmations, they're powerful, aren't they? They work. Words are powerful.
Absolutely.
Louise, just the other day, you were telling me how from now on you walking around and you say, my name is Louise and only good things happen to me. And so Louise said she does it all day long now. So she got me into it yesterday. I'm sitting in my jacuzzi after a stressful day, and I kept saying, my name is Faina and I'm a successful trader. My name is Faina and only good things happen to me. And I'm like, if somebody would just see me right now, right? I was saying them out loud.
You can't worry about that.
But then eventually you're like, well, why not? Why, after a while I was like, okay, well, this is working. I think it's more productive than like, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that again. Oh, I'm so frustrated. Oh, nothing is working. I think that can't possibly lead you to a better place. No. So, now I'm on repeat. And if you watch me around, I'm walking around like mumbling to myself, but with that same intensity, I could say really horrible things to myself. So if I had to pick one, I would rather say good things about myself.
Yeah. And you get into a grind, right? You are what you tell yourself, because after a while you start believing all these things, and then that's when your emotional threshold starts to lower, and then you're stuck in a rut.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I do notice a difference. I'm very quick at getting myself out of a bad funk or day or whatever, like yourself. But, I've noticed a real difference is day and night. Those days where you just naturally wake up and you feel abundant, you look at the birds in the trees, you're kind of just in that real look at this life. Like I've got goosebumps kind of.
Oh, that's awesome.
Flow in, like it's just like that. You've got no attachment to anything. Things flow in, the day flows up, it kind of just, I love it. It's like water. And then the days where you wake up, you're in a little bit of a funk. Maybe you haven't slept well and you're kind of like, it's, they're the days where you won't find a car parking space, or the car will break down. I think that we're so powerful, our energy is so powerful that we're just like magnets, really, aren't we? That's how it works.
Yeah, I think we're frequently offering emotion and then the opposite emotion, right? So we're at a standstill. We're like, I want this to happen, but then the second thought is like, but nothing good happens to me. So we kind of put out our own fire. How do you keep your fire burning? Like, right? How do you how do you keep your fire burning so that you don't offer the opposite kind of emotion to the joy that as soon as we get into that joy space, we want to give ourselves a reality check. I don't know why as humans we're so stuck on reality and reality checks. How do you avoid those reality checks?
So yeah, there are a couple of things that come to mind. First, we'll the Chinese farmer parable. Are y'all familiar with the Chinese farmer parable?
No.
So this is such an amazing story, and I tell myself this story all the time. I'll repeat the words maybe, maybe, and so in brevity, I'll tell a story to save time. But a Chinese farmer and his son lived alone on their farm, and the son forgot to close the gate, and a horse got out, ran away, and then all the neighbors came. Oh my gosh, you're not going to have your horse to till your land. What a tragedy. And the farmer said, maybe. Well, the next day, the horse came back with 4 other wild horses. And the neighbors came back and said, oh my gosh, you're so fortunate. You're going to be able to work this land and then some. Maybe, from the farmer. Well, the next day, the son was trying to break the horses that had arrived, and he fell off and broke his leg. He couldn't work the land. So the neighbors, what a tragedy. You're so unfortunate. Maybe. Following, the army came through. They started a war, and they were conscripting all the young kids. And the son got looked over because he was now limp, right? And the neighbors, oh, how fortunate. Maybe. And so the moral of the story is there, right? But what we have to realize is that our pains and our gains are equitable. And so from there, that's why you can't rest on these laurels in these hyper states, because you can just crash just as far. You can't, you don't want to get too low either, because now we're stuck in this. And so one of the things that that I do, and talking about mindset, in this growth mindset, you have to tell yourself when these emotions come up that you can try and label them as negative, anxiety, I'm not cut out for this, what am I doing? Those aren't negative emotions. They're telling you something, and you need to say every time they happen, okay, how can I use this as a catalyst for growth? So that, like the journaling exercise, so you literally just took something, you were feeling poor emotions that were kind of making you feel negative, and you turned them into a new plan or a catalyst to continue growing. So every time, I hate traffic. I can't stand it. I'm one of those guys, especially being in the military. When we were deployed, you come up behind a vehicle, you just pop the curb or push them out of the way, right? So it was really difficult for me to drive in city traffic. And so I use breathing exercises while I'm driving. Look, I'm not perfect at it, but I try and use that as a time like, hey, how can I use this as a time to remain calm and transform, right? And so that's just one of the techniques that I use. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it, but I'm a work in progress.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic way to look at things. And I think what I just wrote down actually is letting go of resistance builds resilience, doesn't it, as well? So kind of when you're just kind of letting the motions just play out, you're letting go of the resistance. And I think that builds kind of a more resilient mindset, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. And in all your meditation practices, it's when thoughts come up while you're meditating, you're whoever the host, I don't know which one to call them, host, whatever it is. I use Calm app. I'll tell you, like, don't reject it. If you feel pain somewhere, don't reject it. Dig deep into it. Figure it out. You want to learn from it. Why are you feeling this way? And so I think that's a good way to look at it, resisting it. Cause I'm not one of those guys. Like, I don't want to forget what happened to my arm, or that I don't have an arm, because that's brought me to where I am. And so, I want to dig deep and use that to grow. That's a good way to
Yeah.
look at it.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's talk about, can you share a particularly kind of memorable experience? I think it's called an marathon. Sorry, I can't get my words out today. An ultra marathon or triathlon. Is there like a memorable experience that kind of really stands out that you look back and you think, that was an interesting day?
Oh gosh, yeah, one pops right into mind. Okay, so I'm doing I joined a relay team for a triathlon in San Francisco called the Escape from Alcatraz. And so really cool race. Our swimmer was a Paralympian. She was so good. And so you get on this boat, the swimmers do, and it takes you out to Alcatraz, right? The prison that's out there in the San Francisco Bay. And then you jump off this boat and you swim into the coast. It's like a mile or so swim. And so she does that. I'm in the transition area. And so what that is every time that one person is done with the leg, they come into transition, and then the next person goes. So the bike is next. I'm the cyclist on the team. And I've traveled from Atlanta. I was living in Georgia at the time. And with all my gear, swimmer comes in, I go to take off, and my brake cable snap. And the volunteer at the transition looks at me like, "What are you gonna do?" And there were some expletives, but I was like, I didn't come out here to watch. And I took off. Now, San Francisco, if you don't know, is nothing but hills. And so I did this race. I ended up beating, not saying this to brag, 30 professionals. And that was such a cool moment for me, because I had to use my feet to brake. I mean, I put holes in my shoes.
Wow.
But I was traveling at such speeds that I never had before, turning at speeds that I never had before, because there were points where I just couldn't brake, or I'd fall off my bike. But, the moral of that story is I learned so much about my abilities. Had I brakes, I would have never learned how to turn during those quick speeds, how to, go faster down hills. And I learned so much about my abilities that it put me into a different level. And so I always say, like, look, to transform, you have to take your brakes off. And it's sometimes like jumping without a parachute. You have to do things that you're afraid of, and you have to just close your eyes and jump. And so that's the moral of that story, but a very interesting day, because I looked at my team. I'm like, man, I can't let them down. Like, swimmer just crushed the swim. My runner's ready to go. And then there's me. So, it was
Gosh.
fun.
That's a real example of like mental strength. Obviously, you have to have a really good amount of physical strength, but it sounds like your mindset just really took over, and it was just like you were kind of super focused. I'm getting it done. And you just kind of went through all the barriers, didn't you? Literally. It's
just jumped. Yeah. Took off, and I was scared. That's the beauty of it. And so, yeah, it was cool.
Thank you for sharing that story.
Is there a book that helped you with your mindset shift? Is there anything you've read, or during the time that you were reinventing yourself, kind of? Is there anything in particular that you heard, or a quote, a book that kind of put things in perspective for you?
So, during that journey, I wouldn't say so much, but I do read. I do read a lot. And I definitely like Carol Dweck's book. It's called Mindset, which is really good if you haven't picked it up. But she really delves into growth versus fixed. But then she breaks it down: growth versus fixed in your, as a family person, as a business person, and whatever it is. And so you learn a lot through there. But I would say probably some of my favorite books are the Theodore Roosevelt trilogy. He's one of my heroes, because when you talk about resilience, I mean, that guy, he got shot in the chest and continued his speech.
Mm.
That's pretty awesome. And but he is just a, a perfect example of tenacity and resilience, and a leader, a true leader. And we all know the man in the arena. Um, but yeah, I would say those books definitely. Undaunted Courage is another book that is just amazing about Lewis and Clark expedition when Thomas Jefferson sent them to find a route to the Pacific. They're going through uncharted territory, right? They're running into these natives that would kill them. They didn't know, but they had to do all these things to make nice and try and make agreements and everything. And so anyways, that's definitely, those are definitely some of the books that I recommend.
Fantastic. I'll put that on my reading list. So the first question is, do you focus more kind of on the present, like present in the day, or are you quite kind of more forward thinking, looking at the future, or a balance of both?
I think everything is a balance. But I try to focus on the present, but at the same time, if you don't know where you're going, you're going to fall. So I try to have ambitious targets and ambitious goals, and I think it's important to do that. So one of the things that I started doing when I was in the military was, I call it a daily roll up, and it's just a one pager that I print off every day. And at the very top is a 2-month calendar, and on the back of it is my goals, where I'm going, right? And so I'll either print it off the night before or the morning before I start my day. And at the top, it has my schedule. Here's the timelines that I had to hit today. Yes, they're in my calendar, but for me, writing everything down helps me, get it set in stone. And then all the different things that I manage are on the front as well. So let's say when I was in the military, first platoon, second platoon, third platoon, supply, logistics. And then whenever I put a box next to everything that I needed to take care of within each of those units, and asterisk would be if somebody stopped by and said, hey, here's information. And then I'd asterisk. And then I take a red pen and I go 1, 2, 3. And that's my priority list of how I take care of things. And so for me, the biggest part of that is, so one, exactly on the front page, I am in the present, right? But on the back page, by writing down my goals, I'm making sure that I'm on track with my goals. So I think it's definitely a delicate balance, but try not to look too far in the future, because once you have a plan, you sit down and you come up with that plan and a strategy and your tactical mission to get, or your tactical steps to get there. Believe in it, and stay the course. Double down if you have to. Things aren't always going to go the right way, but you made a plan, stick to it. If you're always shifting and changing that plan, oh, this isn't working today, that's not working today, who cares? This is a long game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's important. And for traders as well, that can be a common theme. When something goes wrong, the first thing they'll generally look at is changing their strategy or doing another course. They won't. The last thing generally for most traders, I think, is the last thing they'll look at is their mindset or psychology. And it's about, because I think it's in our kind of DNA that we want to try and fix things. And it's,
Oh yeah.
It can be difficult. But I think when we've got unshakable self-belief about something, we'll make it work. We'll absolutely achieve it. It's just a case of when. So it's.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, go on.
Well, I was just to say, so I akin it to running, right? So today I had a workout run. So it's not just the regular endurance run where you just go at a steady pace forever. It's it's a steady state run is what we call it. So it's at more of a high level, high heart rate. And I like I said, I did not want to be out there. It was painful. It sucked. So the way that I kept going was, this is making me better. I am getting better through this. And then I found myself going faster because I'm like, yes, this is making me better. and I think that, all those setbacks that we have, I'm not gonna go change anything, but I can't just show up and expect to run 100-miler. I have
Mhm.
to go through the pain to get there and stay on track to get there. And so, it's all just building blocks, and some days are going to be worse than others. Hey, man,
Yeah.
that's that's just part of the process.
Absolutely. It's about keeping going. Yeah. Rich, we're coming to the end of the show, but what final piece of advice would you like to give and share to our listeners about overcoming sort of adversity and embracing challenges? I think we've kind of, it's been the theme really, hasn't it, for this,
Mhm.
for the show.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Well,
what,
just knowing Rich, I mean, he done all of that, and just looking and listening to his stories, I'm like, what the heck am I complaining about? I have two arms, two legs. Like, what am I think everything is so relative, right? Because we're like so focused on the all the things that are going wrong, and we're not really giving a lot of credit to what is going right. Like when we take inventory every morning, very seldom do we like, well, this is right, and this is going right, and this is going right, and this is going right. We wake up and we're like, oh, the weather is crap. Yesterday was shit. Like we take a full inventory of everything that went
That's
wrong,
right.
and then we want to have a beautiful day. It's such a weird thing that humans do, right? So, what is like one last piece of inspiration for people who, because they say if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you're right too. So, uh, what will you leave our people who are struggling day after day to get to where they're going, and it feels like it may not happen or it's going too slow, and how does one keep going?
Revisit your plan. Make sure that you're on task. All of these undulating emotions that you're feeling are just part of the journey. Whatever it takes, keep moving forward. You are in a sane mind, in a good emotional state. When you made your strategy, when you made your plan, you know how many trades you have to do to get to X number of profit or whatever you're trying to do. Stay on the plan. Stay on the plan. And if you have to, say, okay, I'm going to stay on this plan for a month or this week, and every week I'll review it. I'll review it. I'll review it to make sure that I'm still on track. That way, you're not making any emotional decisions. I heard one person, I forgot his name, say, emotions are terrible leaders, right? They're good and they serve a purpose, but they're terrible leaders. You made a plan, stick to it, and whatever it takes, keep moving forward.
wise words. Yeah, that's really good. Absolutely. It's just keep focused, keep moving forward, and stick with it, like you said. Yeah,
That's it.
fantastic. Rich, you have been an unbelievable guest. We have loved speaking with you. Would love to have you on again soon at some point in the future.
Yeah, awesome.
But what an inspirational story. And yeah, thank you for sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For
Thanks,
having
Fran.
us.
Thanks, Louise.
Thank you
Yeah,
all
thanks.
for listening, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon.